sort of.
So, do you know anything about the Jersey Boys podcast at all? Do you want me to talk to you a little bit about it?
I see it around a lot, but I suppose you ask me questions and I answer them.
That's exactly right. And we have an ability to share that with people over the internet via the podcast mechanism. So people listen to this on their computer or their MP3 player. And it's a total fan-based thing, so
great.
There's like no really...
Is this Jersey Boys blog or the Jersey Boys...
Podcast.
Which is part of the Dodger put together, separate?
The blog and the podcast were fan-based creations.
Okay.
Not affiliated with...
Independent,
so to speak.
But everybody picks you up.
Yep.
Yes. Okay.
So I was wondering if you could speak a little bit for the new fans that are listening that are just coming along now because of the tour, a little bit about the background of the Jersey Boys project and how this all came about.
For what's happening now with the first national tour?
With the tour in the La Jolla Playhouse and the Broadway production, just the little
from
bit.
The beginning? Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, it obviously started in La Jolla, as you well know. Frankie and I spent time with Marshall and Rick, and kind of spilled our guts, so to speak. And that went, very well. So we moved on to the second stage, which was putting some of it down in, I don't know, a draft of some sort that Rick and Marshall put together. And then Rick and Marshall embarked on seeing if they could get some producers interested.
All right.
First step would be to get a producer of consequence, and second step would be to try and find a director that had a special interest. So that went very well. The Dodgers and someone else, I think it was Bob Boyette, and actually another producer that was interested, all kind of came to the plate very quickly, and then it was a matter of now what. And I tried to get everyone to work together, figured it would be good for all of us, but that never works. So it wound up being that Michael David, the Dodgers, took over, and I had some conversations with Michael and expressed the fact that Des McAnuff and I had a meeting a long, long time ago. I thought he was interested in doing Peggy Sue Got Married, which opened in London. It played London West End, that I composed the music for. And he went off and did a bunch of films. So that sort of went by the wayside. But I did get a feeling from Des during a couple of meetings we had that he was a fan of the music, and he had told me he bought Sherry and 11 others, I think it was. And so that stuck in the back of my mind. And I mentioned that to Michael David, and he said, wow, he used to be one of our partners here, and so on and so forth. So Marshall and Rick thought that was a good choice also. And off we went. Michael contacted Des, and a lot of the in-between stuff from then to when it actually got to La Jolla, I wasn't 100% privy to. Rick and Marshall were kind of dealing with Des daily, and I know there was a collaborative thing back and forth and so on and so forth. And I went in for back surgery. I found out that Des had put a date together, and the button was pushed, and the lights were blinking. So things started moving very, very quickly. And I went in for surgery, and I wound up in La Jolla 3 or 4 days before opening night, so a couple of previews, and I just was just stunned at how terrific it was, even at that stage of the game. And then opening night, Frankie came, and the rest is kind of history. It was. I really don't know what happened from the time I went under the knife. It was kind of a blur. But it was a very exciting moment when we actually got to see it. So I didn't have to go through the daily traumas that I'm sure went on in La Jolla.
All right.
But it was a great team. I mean,
I'm actually fine here. This is good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just adds on.
And that also means I don't have to start over.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, less editing.
Right. So, well, I think that helps people just get sort of a framework, because I know a lot of people don't really have a, I think our listeners, there's a good number of listeners, actually, we were talking about this last night, who've never seen the show and love the podcast just because they have the cast CD.
Wow.
And can you...
Yeah, it's interesting because I've run into a number of people that said they had the cast album and they were just getting around to seeing the show, and I find that very odd, but hey, it's okay with me.
Actually, that sort of runs into my second question. Now, you had a lot of hands-on with the cast CD, is that correct?
I produced the cast CD.
You did,
yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about how that experience was?
Sure. That was, speaking of odd, it was interesting to make records again, slightly different tempos, different voices, different nuances, band is slightly different, but essentially, I think Ron Melrose and Steve Orich did an amazing job of keeping that heart and authenticity and realism, but yet making it what it is. It's a theater piece, and it's a concert piece in many cases, and that's not an easy feat, especially when I'm hanging around saying, no, it's too fast. And they're saying, yeah, but you don't get it. There's dancers up here and so on and so forth. And then they have to look sharp and crisp and Sergio, and everybody is looking at their own, looking at the same picture, but from a different view, So it was a great experience. And Marshall and Rick in particular was present pretty much through the whole recording, because early on, the election was to put some dialogue in. I mean, I personally felt that if you want to listen to the records, buy the originals, and they are what they are. But if you want the essence of the show without the dialogue, it was just making a hits album again, So, yeah, I mean, some people have different opinions, but I'm not unhappy with it. The album's been number 2 for, I don't know, whatever. So people seem to be, and it's the good side of hearing someone bought the album before means they still are enjoying the album without seeing the show. And maybe in some cases, because of the dialogue, are motivated to come see it sooner than later. So I think it was a wise move, and I'm happy with it. I didn't want to just make a sound-alike album, something that we've already done. And I love the idea of condensing the opening into 12 with 11 minutes of dialogue and song pre-season thing. And Rick was very instrumental in helping shape it and change some of the dialogue notes, and so that we could work it into that. And I was thrilled with that. And I've never made an album in a day and a half, so that was quite an experience. But I must say, the cast was extremely well rehearsed. Essentially, except maybe for John and a few other people, was the cast from La Jolla. So they knew what they were doing, and they were on it, and they lived it, and they sounded like a group. So
I think by adding the dialogue in the CD, it tells part of the story. And so that's why people can buy the CD and not have seen the story and yet feel like they know the story, part of the story anyway.
Yeah. Well, there was someone that came to see the show and said she had the CD, and I was curious about that. So I asked her, well, did you come see the show because of the CD, or? She said, oh yeah, absolutely. She said, when you don't live near New York, people that like theater will buy a cast album and try and glean something from that they well, when I go to New York for Christmas or whatever, what do I want to see?
Right.
And she said, this just enthralled me. Apart from the music, the dialogue, I just said, wow, this is more than I hate to use the phrase jukebox musical because we haven't heard it in a while.
Which is a compliment.
Yeah, we finally, I think, jumped over that hurdle.
Yes.
So, I think everything went well. I've said this often. This show's been blessed. Sometimes you can do no wrong. And this is one of those instances so far.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah. So as far as casting goes, you said you didn't have a lot to do with the La Jolla Playhouse production and casting. And did you have anything to do with the tour casting? Were you involved in?
I had something to do with the casting when we went to New York. We were looking for a few key people. John, the replacement of David Noronha, which was scared the you-know-what out of all of us when we lost our lead.
Yeah.
I was there for that, and we saw a number of people, and it was a frightening experience, but it worked out great. John's been just needless to say.
And then you were involved also in doing the casting for the tour,
Yeah.
And so, how did you go about choosing someone to play you? Did you get to be a part of that? Or do you feel like you sort of handpicked?
Frankie and I have I don't want to use the term veto power, but we have a strong opinion in what finally winds up on that stage. And
so when you saw Eric, did you say, "Oh yeah, he's the one," or did you feel like, "Oh, he might be the one. Maybe need to keep looking"? Or
he was definitely down to the final two, and then very quickly the final one. He had. The problem with this is when you're casting, he happened to be very tall. He's actually maybe an inch and a half taller than I am. It might be more hair than I have, but it's something. He's a little bit taller. So my concern was, how short will the choice for Frankie be versus Tommy, and what's it going to look like up there, et cetera, et cetera. As it turns out, this cast is probably more realistic than, as far as the originals were in size, than New York.
Right.
Not that I'm unhappy with New York,
just
because
different.
They're all sexy guys. They're all very thin, but they're not the right height balance.
Right.
But I don't mind it being a lot more glamorous, so that's fine with me.
Well, it works well.
It
and
sure
that's
does.
the key, isn't it?
It sure does.
So you were involved in the casting. Did you also have some other roles in producing the tour, or anything else behind the scenes that you did with the tour? You have your hand in everything, or? Well,
I've been here for 3 weeks, so
yes.
I spent Thanksgiving across the street in a French restaurant. So not that it was so bad. It's just not home. I'm around. I'm kind of listening for what's going on in the theater and the sound and performance, and it's a lot for these kids to learn in a very short period of time. They didn't have the running head start that New York had. La Jolla for one, and then much longer in New York, and I think three weeks of previews or 4 weeks of previews, and they only had like 8 or 9 days here.
Right.
So it's a lot to absorb, and some of the nuances are slow to develop, but they are, now that they're not rehearsing every day, they can sort of sink into this. And I'm saying things and I'm being extremely critical, because for the most part, the audience is over the moon. Last night it was
amazing.
Yeah, I mean, they get everything. The Jersey jokes, it's really astounding to me that it translates seemingly everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, you've been here for 3 weeks. You're very committed to this project. Is there ever a time in the show it says that you enjoy
the boat?
Yes. Do you ever get a chance to enjoy that?
I said that to someone last night who asked me about the boat, who happened to be a boater.
Yeah.
Actually, it was George Lucas was here last night, so we got to chat, and his son's girlfriend's mom has a boat, and we were talking about boating. I said, "Wow, what a great place to have a boat!" And the conversation started. And I also said I haven't seen my boat in a year.
I was afraid you were going to say that.
3 weeks ago, I called to find out if they put the heaters on. It was 18 degrees in Nashville.
Oh
So,
my gosh.
no, hopefully, I don't know, maybe February or something, March, I'll get to it.
Yeah. So do you have any free time that you get to do any?
Other projects?
Yeah. Focused on
Not
Jersey
yet.
Boys right now.
Yeah, not yet. And
uh-huh.
I can't say there's going to be any free time because it's moving very, very quickly. And we'll see what happens in San Francisco. But the tickets just went on sale till March now.
Great.
And there's a good likelihood, that could go further. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see. But we're going into Chicago, and I don't know, October or something, and May in Los Angeles. And we'll see, but there'll be more companies sooner than later.
That's wonderful. Great news.
Yeah.
Congratulations on that. Yeah.
It's exciting.
I didn't have any more questions.
Okay. Well,
No more questions.
then that's great.
Okay.
Thank you so much
well,
for your
thank
time.
you guys. You're doing a great job.
Well,
This
thanks.
is fantastic.
Couldn't do it without you.
Yeah, wow. There's a few other people involved
Yes,
here.
that's true.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.